about 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me, and one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, No. He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran." I said, "Is it classified?" He said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Well, don't show it to me." And I saw him a year or so ago, and I said, "You remember that?" He said, "Sir, I didn't show you that memo. I didn't show it to you."
I'm sorry, what did you say his name was?
I'm not going to give you his name.
So go through the countries again.
Well, starting with Iraq, then Syria and Lebanon, then Libya, then Somalia and Sudan, and then back to Iran. So when you look at Iran, you say, is it a replay? It's not exactly a replay, but here's the truth. That Iran from the beginning has seen that the presence of the United States in Iraq was a threat. A blessing, because we took out Saddam Hussein and the Baathists. They couldn't handle him. We took care of it for them. But also a threat because they knew that they were next on the hit list. And so, of course, they got engaged. They lost 1 million people during the war with Iraq. And they've got a long and unprotectable, unsecurable border. So it was in their vital interest to be deeply involved inside Iraq. They tolerated our attacks on the Baathists. They were happy we captured Saddam Hussein, but they're building up their own network of influence, and to cement it, they occasionally give some military assistance and training and advice, either directly or indirectly, to both the insurgents and to the militias. And in that sense, it's not exactly parallel, because there has been, I believe, continuous Iranian engagement. Some of it legitimate, some of it illegitimate. I mean, you can hardly fault Iran because they're offering to do eye operations for Iraqis who need medical attention. That's not an offense that you can go to war over, perhaps, but it is an effort to gain influence. And the administration has stubbornly refused to talk with Iran about their perception, in part because they don't want to pay the price with their U.S. domestic political base, the right-wing base, but also because they don't want to legitimate a government that they've been trying to overthrow. If you were Iran, you'd probably believe that you were mostly already at war. United States anyway, since we've asserted that their government needs regime change. So, and we've asked Congress to appropriate $75 million to do it, and we are supporting terrorist groups, apparently, who are infiltrating and blowing up things inside Iran. And if we're not doing it, let's put it this way, we're probably cognizant of it and encouraging it. So it's not surprising that we're moving to a point of confrontation and crisis with Iran. My point on this is not that the Iranians are good guys, they're not, but that you shouldn't use force except as a last resort. There is a military option, but It's a bad one.
I wanted to get your response to Seymour Hersh's piece in The New Yorker to two key points this week. Reporting the Pentagon's established a special planning group within the Office of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to plan a bombing attack on Iran. That this is coming as the Bush administration and Saudi Arabia are pumping money for covert operations into many areas of the Middle East, including Lebanon, Syria, and Iran, in an effort to strengthen Saudi-supported Sunni Islam groups and weaken Iranian-backed Shias. Some of the covert money has been given to jihadist groups in Lebanon with ties to Al-Qaeda. Fighting the Shias by funding with Prince Bandar and then with U.S. money not approved by Congress, funding the Sunnis connected to Al-Qaeda.
Well, I don't have any direct information to confirm it or deny it. It's certainly plausible. The Saudis have taken a more active role. You know, the Saudis...
You were just in Saudi Arabia. You just came back from Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, well, the Saudis have basically recognized that they have an enormous stake in the outcome in Iraq, and they don't particularly trust the judgment of the United States in this area. We haven't exactly proved our competence in Iraq. So they're trying to take matters into their own hands. The real danger is, and one of the reasons this is so complicated, is because let's say we did follow the desires of some people who say, just pull out and pull out now. Well, yeah, we could mechanically do that. It would be ugly, and it might take 3 or 4 months, but you could line up the battalions on the road one by one, and you could put the gunners in the Humvees and load and cock their weapons and shoot their way out of Iraq. You'd have a few roadside bombs, but if you line everybody up, there won't be any roadside bombs, maybe some sniping. You can fly helicopters over, do your air cover, you probably get safely out of there. But when you leave, the Saudis have got to find someone to fight the Shias. Who are they going to find? Al-Qaeda. Because the groups of Sunnis who would be extremists and willing to fight would probably be the groups connected to Al-Qaeda. So one of the weird inconsistencies in this is that were we to get out early, we'd be intensifying the threat against us of a super powerful Sunni extremist group, which was now legitimated by overt Saudi funding in an effort to hang on to a toehold inside Iraq and block Iranian expansion.
It's not clear if they came from missile strike. We begin with breaking news from the Middle East as Iran launches retaliatory strikes against Israel. These are the live pictures from Tel Aviv, where we can see huge plumes of smoke rising over the city. It's not clear if they came from missile strikes or the interceptions, but emergency services say 7 people were injured on the ground, according to the AFP news agency. About an hour ago, with air defense systems intercepting missiles above Tel Aviv. And we've also seen a big explosion. Not sure yet what was hit and of any confirmed injuries, but we are getting some images suggesting that a building certainly has been hit and some reports of injuries. Our colleagues on the ground say they've heard several window-rattling booms. Our reporter in Jerusalem has seen drones. Israel says it's continuing its airstrikes on Iranian military targets, meanwhile, following that first wave of attacks last night, which hit nuclear sites and several targets in the capital. This video shows the aftermath of a new airstrike near Tehran in the city of Kandahar. And Iranian media say the country's air defense is now activated in central Tehran. A loud explosion's also been heard in Isfahan. And it comes after several of Iran's military leaders and 6 of the nation's top nuclear scientists were killed, with state media reporting that civilians, including children, are amongst the dead.
Shalom. I want to start off by giving all praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Rakah Kodash. Double honor to the apostles and the elders of the great millstone who rule well. peace and salutations unto the hopeful elect, beginning with the 144,000. This is Brother Yerushalayim, coming at you with a quick video through spirit and power, Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakak Wadash. Alright, this video is a response to the beloved brother, big brother priest, Kahan, out of our camp here in Trinidad, Trinidad camp, prophetic vibration branch. Alright, why 7 countries in 5 years took almost 25 years to be complete. Alright, and we're speaking about the video you just watched, from Wesley with Wesley Clark, I believe a former general. Alright, speaking about what happened with him, basically a confidential list he was privy to, that they plan to attack and list of countries. Alright, this is just after September 11, 2001. Okay, a list of countries, and by the way, subscribe to the brother channel. Alright, this is GMS Yahweh's Precious Stones. Put it up here. Alright, GMS Yahweh's Precious Stones. Subscribe and be edified. Alright, and basically, the brother been saying that for a while, that when they come, when Babylon is drawn out to come against Iran, it may very well be, that trap that is spoken about in I believe it's Jeremiah, is it Isaiah the 50th chapter, Jeremiah the 50th chapter. Alright, that trap that is spoken about there could very well be that, but all this is planned, alright, from a long time ago. Okay, all this is planned. It's nothing new that they were coming against these countries. The list that he listed out, I believe, was it Iraq was the first one, and it basically was these devils anyway. These what you call them? These Jews, those Jews, just using that term for the for those rats across there in our land. All right, in the land of Israel. Okay, all right, they were the ones who pushed for Babylon the Great to go in there. They have to understand that. Then they go talk about Syria, Lebanon, which Syria is the last one which they conquered. All right, Lebanon, Libya, Sudan, Somalia. Most of these countries were what? Arab countries. All right, so-called Muslims. All right, Muslim-based, I should say, instead of Arab. All right, and it's all was the plan, because when you go into the banking elite, or the so-called Illuminati, as we call them, the Illuminati, enlightened ones on the left-hand side, they planned 3 world wars. Alright, they planned 3 world wars. Alright, in order to achieve their new world order. Alright, which is what? Total control. Alright, according to Eustace Mullins and these guys, who we learn from our apostles about. Okay, let me just flip to the book. Satan. Let me see if I can snap this. Just bear with me a moment here. And this what page here I don't want to flip. Just bear with me a moment. Alright, so this is from the book Satan's Angels Exposed. Alright, the 3 wars. This is chapter 22. I believe in around page 162. Alright, it says the 3 wars planned or coincidence. Alright, it says Albert Pike's 3, which Albert Pike was a main fascist, Illuminati member, right? His 3 supreme councils controlled 23 other subordinate groups throughout the world. The Manzini-Pike plan was to control the world. How would this be accomplished? The plan was relatively simple. It was called for, according to the writings of some communists, fascism, and the struggle for the Mid-East, to foment 3 global wars and at least 2 major revolutions, right? World War I, the first World War was to enable communism to destroy the Tsarist government of Russia and replace it with militant atheism. Alright, this came to pass, and now we see the results of this overthrow. Now let's go to the next page. Then we have World War II. Alright, which took place from 1939 to 1945. It says the Second War would begin by manipulating the governments of Great Britain and Germany, okay, to start a world war. Hitler, however, accomplished this almost single-handed, bringing on World War II. After this war, communism would then be in a position to destroy other governments and weaken religions. This also came to pass. Russia controls most of Europe, and the gospel has been effectively suppressed in many, which wasn't the real gospel anyway. Alright? This atheistic move was also successfully spread to China, when China became close to Christianity after World War II. You know, and right after World War II is where they passed the Balfour Declaration, 1948. Just about 3 years after World War II. So all these things were plans, you know, the plans being put in place to set up a Zionist state, etc. Alright? And eventually bring us to what? World War III. Right? World War III. So, you know, they need to roll out this MOTB, which is the RFID microchip. Alright? And you know, and then World War III would start. Right? And World War III will be where they seize control. Alright? In the great chaos that will ensue. Right? So it says the Manzini-Pike blueprint also called for a World War III. Right? This is the time that we're coming into. Right? This would begin by firing up the controversy between Judaism and the Muslim world. You know, isn't that exactly what's taking place right now? You know? Yeah, it is. So Salem Kirban, you know, in this book, at least he had part of it right. Alright? Okay? It will begin by what? Firing up controversy between Judaism and the Muslim world. And this is what they've been doing. You know, when they talk about the 7 countries in the list. Alright? The list of 7 from Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Sudan, Somalia, and Iran. Yeah? Those 7 countries that they were supposed to take down in 5 years. That actually took 25 years, which is a whole other matter. The Lord spread it out. He stretched it out. Because why? You know, the word wasn't fully pushed to the elect as yet. The elect weren't sealed. Alright? That's the reason why. Right? So they couldn't bring on this World War III, which is going to be a deadly war. You know, where the elect is going to need to be sealed to be saved out of this place. To be saved out of Babylon the Great and around the world. Alright? Where the nuclear missiles are going to hit is going to be a nuclear war. A war unlike any other. In fact, you know, I'm going to bring a precept. You know, Lord's willing. Let me see if I can get this here. Let me see if I can get fuel. Fuel of fire. Fuel of fire. Yes, Isaiah 9:5. It says, for every battle of the warrior, right, is with confused noise, garments rolled in blood. And this is how the ancient battles were. Alright, men, soldiers fighting soldiers on the battlefield. Right, whether it's swords, whether it's guns. You know, it's a confused noise, shouting, noise of war, that tumult. And you know, the garments rolled in blood. You know, people get stabbed, get shot. But this World War, this new World War, right, World War III, right, shall be with burning and fuel of fire, because the nuclear missiles are going to be launched, right, you know, by Russia and China, and even by the rest of the EU nations and NATO nations against America. Alright, that's what's going to happen. Now let's go back here. Just bear with me a moment here. Right, World War III. So they said it would begin, going back into the book here, by firing up a controversy, right? Right? Between Judaism and the Muslim world, and that's what they've been doing, right? By going into these countries, you know, and really and truly, you know, it's all about control. You know, they want, as one guy said, you know, they want to have that control over the money, the global money, you know, and these countries, a lot of them were coming up against that. An example is Libya with Gaddafi. You know, Gaddafi refused to bend, you know, and he basically wanted to set up a United States of Africa dollar. Alright? And I just have a clip. Let me see if I can get it. Just bear with me a moment here. Alright, so I'm gonna play a clip of the video from Elder Malcolm This is YouTube handle here, Critical Race Historical Facts. Alright, this cannot be stopped. World War III is happening, and it's happening, you know. So this may very well be the trap that the Lord set for Babylon, you know, the least of the flock, drawing them up. Which least of the flock is those rats over there in the land, those Joes. Alright, those Joes over there, Joe-ish. Alright, let's play this.
Leads to invade countries like Iraq, Afghanistan, etc. But the reality is, Saddam Hussein in Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. Absolutely nothing.
And as it's just saw, you know, in the video with Wesley Clark, you know, he confirmed it had nothing to do with 9/11. He just said, you know, they just had this list, and basically, he called them what, a hammer. All right, he called them what, a hammer. You know, and a hammer has to what, pound nails. They had a military, and the military has to stay active, which we know is a damn lie, because we saw right here that it was these devils, you know, these Rothschilds and whatnot, Rockefeller, the banksters, and who were the ones who set up World War this to be World War III. All right, so let's read lower down here. It says they hope that the Zionists and the Muslims would destroy each other and bring the rest of the world into a final conflict. Right, that final conflict, you know, order out chaos, order out of chaos. It's in the American dollar. All right, this Armageddon would bring complete social, political, and economic chaos. Right, you know, and as if you watch the Game of Thrones series, you know, they had a character called Littlefinger. You know, a real demon. He's basically, you know, mirroring the global banking elite. You know, and he basically said, you know, confusion is a ladder. Alright, it's a ladder to what, the top. Okay? And that's what they want. They want complete, utter, total control. This is what these devils want, these banksters. You saw Edom, the so-called white man, the head of Amalek. I mean, I ain't even speaking about Netanyahu, not a Jew, which is the prime minister. No, we're not talking about him too, but he's controlled by them. But yet he is controlling Trump. Alright? Okay? It says while the Illuminati secret few may fan the fires, this is what they do in the fan and the fires, that's what they've been doing, it must be seriously questioned how much world influence this group has had in the last century. It is quite possible that these Illuminati schemes for 3 world wars are more recent, and no, they're not recent inventions. These are old stuff. They planned this thing. Right, and I'm jump down here. It says in any event to fill the void created by Armageddon would come a world government. Right, a world government headed by the Illuminati. Right, this is what they want. Okay, in a letter now catalogued in British Museum in London, Pike wrote to Manzini, then everywhere the people disillusioned with Christianity would receive the true light, right, that will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time, right, so they could set up the Satanism, right, the worship of Satan, aka, the beast, right, the beast. You'll take them, they mark, all right. This is what it's about, you know. Okay, this is what they're about. Yeah, they worship their God, you know, which we know is the spiritual demon Satan. But they are the devil that the Bible speaks about. Alright, they are the devil the Bible speaks about. Now let's go to this precept here in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 50 and verse 24. We start at verse 23. It says, how is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? Right, who's the hammer of the whole earth? We just heard from Wesley Clark. He was talking about the American army, right? You know, the Babylon's army, right? How is Babylon become a desolation among the nations, right? So you know this. How was she become a desolation? You know, she was so strong. All right. Here I have laid a snare for thee, and thou art also taken, O Babylon, and thou was not aware. Thou art found and also caught. Why? You know, you're going to be caught because the least of the flock going to draw you out, and it's all the will of the Heavenly Father. All right. You took down here. It is you took down 6 of these nations on your list. from Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Sudan, and Somalia. But now when they reach the 7th, which is spiritual, because 7 is the number of completion. You know, this is where, you know, things are gonna get too hefty. You know, heard Russia coming in, Putin coming in and saying, you know, basically Iran and Russia has the same enemies. You know, roughly paraphrasing what he said. So basically, you know, they're gonna come to their defense. Alright? It's not gonna be so easy for Babylon. It's gonna result in Babylon the Great being burnt up. Alright? It says, O Babylon, and thou was not aware, thou art found and also caught, because thou hast striven against the Lord. So going back and now to Jeremiah 49. Let's go Jeremiah 50 first. Jeremiah 50, jump down to verse 45. Alright? It says, therefore hear ye the counsel of the Lord. So this is the counsel of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai's plans. The Lord's plan is to what? Is to trap up Babylon. Right? They be caught in the snare. Okay, Jeremiah 50, so like verse 45. Let me just highlight this here. Alright? That he had taken against Babylon, and his purposes that he had purposed against the land of the Chaldees, right? Which is going back into those elites. It says, surely the least of the flock shall draw them out, which is going back into these Jews, these Jewish, you know, back in our land, these rats, right? They go drawing them up, netting not a Jew. You know, making Trump, calling for Trump to come in and defend them. Starting a war which they knew they couldn't win. They know they need the backing of America, of Babylon the Great. Babylon the Great having no choice but to come to their help, or else they'll be completely exterminated. Right? It says, surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them. Right? And now when you go to the chapter before, Jeremiah 49 and 20, this is how you know it's speaking about these Edomites, right? Jeremiah 49 and 20 says, therefore hear ye the counsel of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, that he had taken against Edom, and his purposes that he had purpose against the inhabitants of Teman. So you see in the last chapter, in 50, it said Babylon, taken against Babylon. Now Edom, now it replaces Babylon with Edom. So you know who Babylon, when we refer to Babylon, who we talking about? The so-called white man. Esau, Edom, the so-called the wicked that the Bible talks about. Not the so-called wicked, the wicked. Alright? And his purpose is that he had purpose against the inhabitants of Teman. Alright? Which are the smartest out of the tribes of Esau, Edom. Alright? It says, surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely shall make their habitations desolate with them. So they're going to be made desolate. Okay? So this was their plan. The plan was, you know, to start, you know, come against the Muslim so-called community, you know, all these Muslim countries, and stir up Islam. You know, when you're seeing it happening, you're seeing the Sunnis uniting with the Shiites and whatnot, you know, coming together, and basically it's going to happen. You know, things are going to get heated up. All right, things are going to get heated up from way back since the 50s with Gamal Abdel Nasser, the former, I believe was the Prime Minister or President of Egypt. You know what he said, he was the ambassador, you know, ambassador that was sent among the heathen. Right? This is Jeremiah 49 and 14. I have heard a rumor from the Lord. An ambassador is sent unto the heathen, right, saying, gather ye together and come against her and rise up to the battle, come against Edom. Now here in the NLT it says, I have heard a message from the Lord that an ambassador was sent to the nations to say, form a coalition against Edom and prepare for battle. So you see it right there. There's these Islamists coming together, right? Which they thought was their plan, but really is the plan of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. Alright? You know? But the scriptures talk about this coalition. You know, you don't need to go any further, but Ezekiel, when you go to the Ezekiel, the 38th chapter, right, it talks about Russia guarding these nations. This is Ezekiel 38. And verse, start of verse 2, it says, Son of man, set thy face against Gog and the land of Magog. Alright, Magog, that's mean from Gog. Right, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal and prophesy against him, with the chief prince going to Rash, I believe it's Raash, and Shah. Right, Raash means head or chief, and Shah means prince. Alright? So chief prince of what? Meshach and Tubal. That's where you get Rashah from, chief prince. Verse 3 says, and say, thus saith the Lord power, behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws. And I will bring thee forth and all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them what? Handling swords. So swords going back into weapons of war, missiles, etc. Alright? It says Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet. Pretty much, at least 2 of those countries are on the list. On those 7 countries. Persia, who was Persia? Well, Iran was known as Persia before 1935, before they changed the name. Alright? Okay? And this listed here as one of the countries that are going to come against Babylon the Great. Because when you read down, you're going to read more about it. Alright? It says Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet. Alright? Gomer and all of his bands. The house of Togarmah, which is Turkey of the north quarters, and all of his bands and many people with thee. Be thou prepared and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee. And be thou what? A guard unto them. Russia is a guard unto them. So more than likely Russia and China ain't gonna let America have their way with Iran. They're gonna have to be very, very, very careful what they're doing. Alright? But the Lord is not gonna allow them to start that World War III without the MOTB being pushed. Alright? Verse 8 says, after many days thou shalt be visited. In the latter years thou shalt come into a land that is brought back from the sword, which going back to the land of Israel. They're going to swoop down into the land of Israel, all these nations, right? And is gathered out of many people against the mountains of Israel, which had been always waste, right? Because we're not in the land is cursed. That's why they have to have a kibbutz, where they irrigation system to channel water, to grow crops, etc. Alright? Okay, it says, which have all, of course, we are not in the land. That's the reason why the land is cursed. It says, which have been always waste, but is brought forth out of the nations, and they shall dwell safely, all of them. Right? Thou shalt ascend and come like a storm. Thou shalt be like a cloud to cover the land, thou and all thy bands, and many people with thee. That's what the scripture talk about the river, the river Euphrates being dried up to make way for the kings of the east. Right? That they could come against Israel. Right? It says, thus saith the Lord power, it shall also come to pass that at the same time shall things come into thy mind, and thou shalt think an evil thought. And that evil thought is what, they're going to go and invade America as well. Alright? And that's exactly what's going to happen. America is going to be invaded. Alright? It's going to be invaded. So things are heating up. Things are heating up. This devil talk about, the 5 years that he said you're gonna take down these 7 countries in 5 years. Well, it took almost 25 years. Alright? You had the devil Netanyahu talking about, in 2002 and 2012 and this year here, talking about, they almost have the bomb. Right? Which is a damn lie, of course, again, because at the end of the day, they said the same thing about Iraq. Weapons of mass destruction, and what they found none. They found none. Now let's go back to the video here from the Elder Malcolm's channel.
Afghanistan and the Taliban had nothing to do with 9/11.
Absolutely nothing.
9/11 was committed by Israel. Israel did 9/11 to the United States.
Now the official
Anybody in the Middle East, so Israel can manipulate their dumb goyim slave army to go to war for them. And it worked. You invaded all these nations. And why did you really invade these nations? It wasn't for liberation. It's because they didn't have an Israeli-controlled Rothschild central
borrower is servant to the lender. And that's exactly what these devils employ, these Rothschilds, right? You know, which comes from the word red shield, right? The children of Esau, and Amalek more specifically.
That's the reality. That's why they want Iran. That's why they want North Korea. Has nothing to do with them being afraid. Has everything to do with them wanting power. And Israel.
Right, because
Right, it's full control, total control. So problem, reaction, solution. They create the problem, right? You know, people call for a solution. You know, they demonize the country and then they go in there, right, and conquer and take over, and they cause a world war, which is what they want to bring. They have to bring mass confusion and mass chaos and mass death, you know, in order to accomplish this goal of the new world order. All right, and you know it's all a ritual. It's all ritualistic. This is how these devils rule, you know, with the wicked Satanism. All right. So that's really what's going on, you know, and they're beating the plowshares into swords. This is what they're doing right now, you know, to come down to the valley of Jehoshaphat. Let's get that precept here. Let's get the book of Joel 3, verse 9. It says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, you know. Wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of war draw near. All right. Let them come up. So they waking up the mighty men. All the technology, everything. There's the best nuclear scientists to be put. They go being put to work. All right, to create weapons for World War III. It says, beat your plowshares into swords, right, and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. All the nations that were previously weak, that previously couldn't stand up to America and Babylon the Great and the beast, European Union and NATO, now, you know, they're being mighty. They got nuclear weapons. It says, let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. Yahushua is coming down. The valley of Yehoshaphat, or Yahweh judgment. Alright? This is what the Lord is about to do. Alright? Well, this whole thing is about Israel. This whole thing is about you blacks, Latinos, Native Americans, you Israelites. Alright? That's why this war is going to be fight. It's over that land. Alright? And you know, the same ambassador that was sent among the heathen, when you go back into the book of Jeremiah 49, and from the 14th verse, right? It says, I have heard a rumor from the Lord, an ambassador sent forth among the heathen, right? You know, he was the one who was coming up and saying that these people are not the Lord's true people. They are not, all right? And that's why he will never have peace in the Middle East. So these people who will across there, these Arabs and whatnot, they know who the children of Israel are, would know the original children of Israel who were so-called black Negroes, all right? And that's why, you know, they know that these people are false. They can never be the people. And it doesn't match back. They don't match back to prophecy. Because prophecy said that, you know, when the Israelites go back into the land, there would be peace. You know, and King David would rule over them. And there's neither peace. There's never been peace, and there's no peace now. And neither is King David ruling over them. So they're not the people. This is Micah 4, verse 11. It says, now also many nations are gathered against thee. Gathered against who? Against Israel. Right? That say, let her be defiled, and let our eye look upon Zion. Right, this is what it is. All right. But they know not the thoughts of Yahweh, neither understand they his counsel. So they don't understand counsel of the Lord. All right. For he will gather them as sheaves unto the floor. The Lord is going to destroy all these nations. That's why he's gathering them. Right. That's why we don't rise up with no when he took fight against his people, no. Because the Lord himself is going to do it. But he's raising up these devils to fight these nations to be divided, the kingdoms, all right? The Carmanians, when you read about in when you go to 2nd Esdras 15 and verse 28. 2nd Esdras 15 and verse 28. Right? when you go back into it, it says, behold a horrible vision, and the appearance thereof from the east, when the nations of the dragons of Arabia shall come out with many chariots, and the multitude of them shall be carried as the wind upon earth, that all they which hear them may fear and tremble. Also the Carmanians, which going back into the Iranians or the Persians, right, raging in wrath, right, so they can be raging in wrath, shall go forth as wild boars of the wood, and with great power shall they come and join battle with them, and shall waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians. So this is going to happen. These Edomites land, in Israel, even across in America here. All right. So that's all. This is prophecy, and is at the end of the day, going back to the heading or the video that the brother did. This is just a response to it. The elect were not sealed at that time. So they couldn't finish in 4 years, because why? In 5 years, Salakia, because this truth really went out. When our apostles went onto the internet back in 2007, all right, which would be basically which basically would be 1 year after these devils had planned to take out these 7 countries. Because if it was 2001, they had the plan. 2001 plus 5 years is 2006, right? So the Lord wouldn't allow it. The Lord didn't allow it, because why? Man's goings of the Lord. It took them a lot longer. All right, let me get a precept here. This is Revelation chapter 7. So this just of thought, as to why so how the Lord set this trap for Babylon. All right, and it was set in such a way, always considering the elect. The Lord has respect unto his elect. All right, the Lord has to make sure his elect is sealed first with his word. So this is Revelation 7:1. It says, and after these things I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, and that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, or on any tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living power. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels, to whom it was given to hurt the sea and the earth and the sea, saying, hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, which are the people, till we have sealed the servants of our power in their foreheads. Right? And World War III is going to be so detrimental, so destructive, during that time of Jacob's trouble. Many billions are going to die. Billions going to be unalived. So the Lord couldn't allow his elect to be destroyed. Going back into Revelation 9, during World War I, when the parents of the elect men and women, basically, they were preserved through it. Okay? Alright? It says, verse 3, hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our power in their foreheads. So that's why, the elect, weren't basically they weren't allowed to bring in this world war far quicker, because remember, the devil wanted to achieve his agenda. Revelation 12:12. The devil come down with great wrath, knowing he has but a short time. So he wanted to achieve this earlier, but he couldn't, because it wasn't the will of the Lord. The Lord set him back. The word of the Lord had to go out. All right. Again, let's go here. 2nd Esdras, the 9th chapter and the 19th verse. It says, for then everyone obeyed, but now the manners of them which are created in this world that is made are corrupted by a perpetual seed, which is what Esau, Edom, devil. That's why he has to be wiped out. And he is going to be wiped out. The so-called white man will be wiped out. He'll be no more. According to Obadiah 1:18, in Zechariah 12:6, many other scriptures, it says, by a law which is unsearchable, rid themselves, right? So I considered the world, and behold, it was in peril, because of the devices that were coming to it, these devils. All right? And I saw and spared it greatly, and have kept me a grape of the cluster, and a plant of a great people, right, which is elect. Let the multitude perish then that were born in vain, and let my grape be kept, right, and my plant, for with great labor have I made it perfect. The Lord is always helping out his elect. The same reason why, in the 60s, during the Cold War between Russia and the United States, you know, there were chariots that were appearing and shutting down the nuclear weapons. Alright? It's the same reason why, you know, because the elect had to be sealed with this knowledge, this truth. Sealed with the Holy Spirit. Alright, until what? The day that Yahweh Shai come back. When Yahweh Shai himself is going to plead with these nations in the valley of Jehoshaphat, as we read. Alright? That's what's going to happen. So to Wada Yahbashim Yahweh Shai for that. You know? All praises to his holy name. Just going to get one more precept, Lord willing, and close this out. The book of Romans, chapter 10, verse 15. Or start verse 14. How then shall they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him in whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? So if the elect men were unalived before that, you know, the elect wouldn't get the word. They wouldn't be sealed with the Holy Spirit. Alright? And how shall they preach except they be sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of them that preach the gospel of peace. And we know that the spirits of the prophets are subject unto the prophets. So you're a prophet back then, you're a prophet now. So the prophets had to be on the scene doing the work. You're going back into Isaiah 30 and 20. Jeremiah 3 and 15. The Lord say he will send, your ear will hear your teachers. Right? It says, and shall bring glad tidings of good things, the gospel. But they have not all obeyed the gospel, for Isaiah saith, Lord, who had believed our report, our report? So then faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the word of power, and faith wouldn't come unless the word was preached. Alright, faith wouldn't come to the elect. Alright, they wouldn't have woken up. Alright, but I say, have they not heard? Yes, verily. Their sound went into all the earth, and their words unto the end of the world. And that's what's happening now. So the elect is close to be sealed if not sealed already. So this is why things are stirring up to the level that they are now. And prophecy is rolling. The wheels of prophecy are rolling. We're very close to World War III. Rumors of war, right? We are in wars and rumors of wars. Very soon it's going to be real. It's going to be the real World War III. But the Amotimi has to be pushed first. Alright, so with that, you know, hey, the Lord has set a trap for Babylon. You know, and she's going to be taken. I pray this lesson was edifying to you. Next time, Shalom, Waharag, Babal.